Aloha, friends. This is Leviathan here for BlizzPro, and I just wanted to go over now that we have seen BlizzCon come and go. I wanted to go over some of the things that we learned from the two panels, what's next for Diablo 3 and Evolving Reaper of Souls, just so there's another format for people to take in the information besides the great articles that we have written on the website, which I'll actually go into right here. So you can see on the website diablo.blizzpro.com, Nineball did some great write-ups about the both panels, just covering kind of what we learned and the things that we saw. So if you want to check those out, you can go to the website. I'm briefly just going to go into some of the things, mainly from the what's next for Reaper of Souls panel, because a lot of the juicy info came out of that. So on that panel, we had Josh Mosquera, who's the game director, Wyatt Cheng, the senior technical game designer, Kevin Martins, who's the lead designer, and Johnny Ebert, who's the senior game designer for the console. And they started out talking about the new things that they're going to put into the game, mainly talking about patch 2.1.2, which is coming soon, and apparently we'll be able to test it on PTR, Patch Test Realm, rather soon as well. One of the main things that they wanted to talk to us about were the treasure goblins that they're adding to the game. There'll be 3 new ones. The Blood Thief, who will drop blood shards, the Odious Collector, and he's going to be responsible for dropping crafting materials and plans, and then the Gem Hoarder, which of course will drop gems. There's going to be new icons on the map for these treasure goblins, and also new AI for them too, so that's pretty cool. They should more reliably drag you into perilous situations, so your need for greed may end up killing your character off, especially terrible if you're in hardcore. Some of the other things that they talked about too were changes to adventure mode coming. For Rifts, they're going to be changing some of the older areas that we've experienced. So for 2.1.2 specifically, we'll see changes to the Oasis map, Spider Caves, and Leoric's Jail. And in the panel, they use the Tristram Fields, the Fields of Misery, as the example. That one is not going to be reworked until a future patch. But they said that they were able to change it up so that they'll have about 12 different variations in there. So some of these bigger maps that we're used to, that were kind of static in terms of how we progress through them, we'll be able to kind of see some variation within the different rifts, which should be excellent. For legendary gems, they had a nice pie chart, which I unfortunately don't have here for you guys, but they were showing just kind of which ones were in the most usage, and Bane of the Trapped and Bane of the Powerful were 2 of the highly used ones, which kind of is a no-brainer, I suppose. And Enforcer is right behind that. With the popularity of Demon Hunters, it kind of makes sense that Enforcer would be pretty high up there as well. So they noted that the defensive gems are really unloved. Moratorium and the Invigorating, I think it's Invigorating Gemstone, that one just sees no love at all, and Moratorium a little bit more so, but a very small slice of the pie. So in the future, they're going to be adding legendary gems, 2 of them that are coming in 2.1.2, which you can see on your screen right now, the Esoteric Alteration and the Molten Wildebeest Gizzard. Both of them focused highly on defense, and they're hoping that by adding these gems, they won't need to go in and nerf or change any of the old ones, but instead make it a little more salacious in terms of what your options are, so that way you'll have tougher choices to make, and maybe you instead will take one of these defensive gems, especially if you're having trouble, like some players, finding that unity and follower can't die combo. Maybe one of these gems can take the place of that, or even in addition to that combo, make it really stalwart for some of those higher greater rifts. So that's pretty exciting news coming in the very near future as well. I did a little bit of number crunching on the Molten Wildebeest Gizzard, and that level 25 unlock states that after not taking damage for 4 seconds, you should gain an Absorb Shield for 200% of total life per second. And again, most of these figures and numbers, they're all subject to the PTR, so they could change in the future before they're added to the game. But I was assuming that, a Templar at level 70 as your follower, and max life per second in Paragon, and the gem at level 25, if I assume that it would just cut in half, since the one they displayed was level 50, and that had a 50,000 life per second. It would give you about a shield of 127,000, so it's not too bad. Assuming most characters have around like 400,000 life or so, average, It gives you like another quarter of life, which should be pretty significant, I would hope. But we'll see how these gems end up playing out. In Greater Rifts, Wyatt Cheng talked quite a bit about Greater Rifts, and he noted that pylons were a big point of discussion within the community, especially the conduit pylon. They said they have no plans to remove it. They might look at changing the damage output that it does, but instead they're going to buff up the other pylons so that people won't necessarily just endlessly search for conduits, but instead they'll be happy to see pylons in general, and they should play a bit more within your Greater Rift runs, because they're also looking to have it so that each Greater Rift should contain reliably 2 to 4 pylons that you'll see. So that will mix things up. I'm not completely sold on that. I think that, you know, conduits still will reign supreme just because they do so much damage in such a short burst of time. I would rather opt for them being taken out, but I can see why they would rather keep the feature in the game. So I'm hoping that with the PCR, we can test some of these new changes and see if it ends up, you know, coming up with the result that Wyatt is hoping for. I wanted to quickly go into some of the changes that they're planning right now. The speed pylon will last for a minute, which normally it's just 30 seconds, and it'll let you run through Waller, and it'll also let you run through mobs and knock them up into the air, so as a kind of debuff. That should be really cool, actually. Kind of looking forward to that. And then the shield pylon sounds really awesome. It's actually going to give you the reflex damage affix under the new change to it. And also when the shield ends, you'll just explode and do a ton of damage to the mobs that are around you at that time. So there should be some skill usage going into pylons besides just, you know, trying to find your conduit in terms of when you take the pylon and what you do with it after that. Wyatt also talked about density, and they're just going to look to make sure that some of those low density maps that people get are brought up to snuff to kind of average out, so that there's no one, you know, really bad Greater Rift map or population or anything like that where you get in and you're just like, oh, I'm never going to make the time on this. It should be a little bit more consistent throughout, which is good. They're also going to look at all the different Rift Guardians and change them to have new and interesting mechanics, make the fights more memorable, and that should result in just more fun battles within the Greater Rifts, and hopefully not so many agonizing stories like, oh god, I got Rhyme, or oh god, I got Ryzel, so this is just not going to work. One of the things that they mentioned that's really awesome is that they're going to try their best to make it so the algorithms for creating these random tile sets within Greater Rifts, they're going to take out a lot of the long dead ends and a lot of the long loops, so that you shouldn't lose a lot of time in exploration. Like if you're going to fail a Greater Rift, it should really come down to you just not having enough damage output, or perhaps being a little too squishy and doing too much kiting, but not because you're you know, hurt on exploration. Like that's the last thing they want to punish you. So hopefully that'll change. And then for softcore, they're going to readdress death and possibly experiment with opening up the revive at corpse mechanic again. But instead of being able to do it as you please, there's going to be an incrementing counter, kind of back to what we saw in early vanilla Diablo, where the more you die, the higher your respawn time will be. You'll be able to revive right at your corpse, so that there's a little bit more, a little less, I should say, punishing gameplay if you die far away from a checkpoint or something like that. You'll be able to revive at your corpse, which should be faster, but if it keeps being a way that you zerg down the content, you're going to get hurt for it. So some things like that coming up. And actually, here's some stuff here on the screen that I should have been showing you guys. They also talked at length about Season 2. Conquest is one of the things that they went into detail on, and they noted that they really didn't like the Race to 70 ones, so that's going to be not reappearing in Season 2. And they really like the ones that sort of change our gameplay, like Speed Racer and the achieving a certain high level of Greater Rift. So those are the type of conquests they're going to focus on. And then you can see the 3 that they actually did preview for Season 2 are Avaricia, which is trying to get a 50 million gold streak outside of the Vault and the Inner Sanctum. They also did Worlds Apart, which will have a list of a certain bosses that we have to kill max level Torment 6 within 20 minutes of starting a game. So I'm assuming that's going to be kind of like go around and really have to plan out your plan of attack in terms of getting those done in that time frame. And lastly, Language, which I'm sure Nineball will love. which is a collection of a certain lore book achievements that you have to get before you get that conquest. So just some different ways to play the game, which should be pretty cool. We'll also see 2 new transmog pieces coming in with Season 2. We'll get the legs and the boots to go along with the helm and the shoulders that we got from Season 1, as long as you got a character to level 70, and it'll unlock for that mode. So you'll get it for your hardcore if you get a level 70 to hardcore, or in softcore if you get your level 70 in softcore. They're also going to add some legendary items, of course, with Season 2, and some of the ones that they previewed were Wormwood, which is an item that actually exists right now, but they're going to rework it for witch doctors, and it will cause Locust Swarm to just continuously plague enemies around you, almost like an aura of Locust Swarm, and it will always roll with 21 and 25% poison damage, so that's pretty cool. And then there's also Ransler's Folly coming in, which I believe was a bracer, and Energy Twister will periodically pull an enemy within 30 yards, and the effect can only happen, or an enemy can only be affected by this every 5 seconds. So that will be interesting for wizards and witch doctors, and we didn't see any of the other ones, but I'm sure those will be equally exciting. Another thing that was previewed was Ancient Items, as you can see here on the screen, which is just another tier above the legendary items that we can find right now. They've been noted that they'll be about like 30% better at the highest levels of what we can find currently. So it's just another thing for those players that play a ton and get to the point where they almost have perfected their items or have perfected their gear sets and things like that. It's another thing to chase. There's a lot of controversy on this right now. I wrote an article today kind of going over why I think this is a great addition, and Danny Ray yesterday wrote an article going over why he thinks this is not a really good thing to add to the game. So if you fall on either side, you might be interested in our articles on those. But Ancient Items in general seem like they'll be a really nice thing to have, in my opinion, just to add more carrots to the chase. They'll only be available in Torment difficulty, and as you go up higher in Torment, the odds to find them go up, and also in Greater Rifts, the higher you go up, the higher the odds to find them as well. So we will see. They didn't really specify exactly what the drop rate of them was, but Wyatt said maybe about 5 to 10% chance to find an ancient legendary item. But it's all subject to change again with the PTR. One of the things that's really awesome is that they're actually adding a brand new zone. And you can see here that this Rat King and some of these Yetis and things will also be part of that. It's called the Ruins of Secheron, and they showed a quick cinematic from Diablo 2, Lord of Destruction, which is sort of where the inspiration for this zone came from. It's going to be added close to the core of area in Act 3. It's going to have bounties within that zone, which is really cool. So they're basically adding like a brand new thing for us to explore, very different from when they added the cesspools, which only appeared in Rifts. This is actually just going to be a brand new territory that we can explore and do bounties through, quests, etc. It's only going to be in adventure mode too as well. So we'll see new enemies here. They previewed a few of them, like nausea beetles, frost maggots, glowing death, and also the Rat King, which will be a new Greater Rift Guardian as well, or Rift Guardian I should say in general, Greater Rift Guardian as well. And it just looks really cool. It's going to feature a lot of traps. It's the Barbarian city, I suppose. I'm not super sure on that. I'm sure Nineball will correct my lore later on, but it's basically just a lot of history there. It's ruins because Bale, pretty much destroyed it, so there'll be a lot of nostalgia there. A very dark and melancholy place, as Kevin Martins described it. They also reworked, which I saw we scrolled past earlier, Act 1, so that it'll have a brand new layout, and it'll just be a little bit easier to get to the jeweler, get to Miriam. That should be really nice in terms of efficiency, and no matter what act you get plopped down in. And I think that's really about it at this point. The Q&A came up at the end, and there weren't too many great questions. Someone did ask about microtransactions for buying stash space and extra character slots. Didn't get a lot of traction. It didn't seem like Josh was really interested in that, or at least not interested in going into detail on it. And there were questions about the difficulty of monsters from the different acts and how people fish for certain distributions in Greater Rifts. So that's kind of harkening back to what I was talking about with the conduit stuff. They said that they're obviously aware of it and working on making sure that the populations are a little more even. So you kind of get some of the monsters that give you like paper cut, some of the ones that do really big damage. And they're also reworking some of the mechanics and the ways that monsters act, especially from Act 4 and 5, because they do realize that those ones are usually the biggest headaches in terms of tackling them and killing them. There's a question on trading, and then Josh kind of gave what I've been preaching, which is that it ruins the reward loop, so they didn't want to kind of bring it back as we knew it. It kind of forces your friends to skip upgrades when you give them super powerful items, so they may add in things from the console like gifts and the Nemesis system, etc., and that could be a way to sort of, have trading but in a different format. Not necessarily trading, but at least being able to help out friends and things like that. Lastly, there was a question regarding the trials, and Wyatt did note that they were making changes to them, so it means that they'll actually still be in the game. I know some people just wanted them removed outright, but they will be in the game still, and you can look forward to testing them in the PTR as they make different changes to them. So to generally kind of sum things up, 2.1.2 is coming soon. What we will see there will be treasure goblins, and maybe more of them, different types of treasure goblins. Season 2, new legendaries and the legendary gems, the adventure mode improvements, and ancient items. And then in the future patches, we'll see the ruins of Sescheron, new monsters, new legendaries, and just more stuff. So a lot to look forward to. The other panel, which was Evolving Reaper of Souls, they kind of just talked about the history of how we got from vanilla Diablo to where we are now with Reaper of Souls. They also talked about just creating legendary powers, because there was the legendary workshop that was part of that. And they picked one at the end, which seemed really interesting. At first it was an idea for Wizard Source, where it would rotate the elemental affinity that it gave you a bonus for. So it could be, lightning at one point, and then fire at the next, and then cold, etc., etc. And they liked the idea so much that they assumed or hoped that they would be able to put it on maybe like a ring or a belt, so that other classes could benefit from it as well, to kind of give that fantasy and break away from just this one specification of, I am this elemental build, this is all I do. And really, especially for the wizard, to give the fantasy back of being an elementalist and working with the Tal-Rasha's set of using multiple elements, not just locking yourself into one. So that's pretty much it from BlizzCon for Diablo. We didn't get a ton of huge announcements, and a lot of people were disappointed with that. I think we're kind of just in that weird middle phase right now where we got a big patch with 2.1. They're not yet at the point where they can talk about an expansion. So BlizzCon didn't really have the right timing for a big Diablo news release. But I think we have a lot of things to look forward to in the future. And I hope that you guys will join me in finishing out Season 1 and testing out the PTR for the next patch in Season 2. Until then, keep grinding, my friends.